into Happy Hour, where we discuss any other business. And today, I thought we'd bring up what are our favourite classes and why.
Ooh, that
Let's start.
is a juicy subject.
It is, because I know everyone has their favourites. I already know what Dan's is because I've played with Dan long enough. But let's start with you, Anton. I'm curious to find out what yours. I think I know, but let's see.
No,
What
I
is
was
your
hoping you
favourite
wouldn't start with me because I've got several favorite.
Well, what's your number one? And maybe we'll have time for your number two once we've done a round. But what's your
I
number one
think
favorite?
my number one favorite is Rogue.
Really?
It is not because I play rogues; it's because it's my favorite class to multi-class into. and I'll probably put it on the same level as fighter. Like fighter and rogues are my favorite classes. They were in most of my builds, and they're never the main component of that build. They're always a side component, and that's why I love them. It's mainly because you get so much kind of value and upfront from the first 3 levels of fighter. You know, you're getting your con saves, your armor, the weapons, the action surge, the healing, plus your 3rd level. That's just juicy. And the rogue, similarly, if you are a dex-based character and you want to add a bit more damage or go in a slightly different route, you don't even have to be dex. You can actually also be strength-based with finesse weapons, as I did with the barbarian. But you get a d6 at 1st level, so you're already bumping up your damage by quite a lot by going 1 level. 2nd level, you're getting bonus action, dash, hide, and by the 3rd level, you can also choose your rogue subclass, and that can go. You can become a mastermind. You can become a swashbuckler. And so there's a lot of versatility in Rogue, I find. So that's probably why it's my favorite class, without being my favorite class.
Yeah, you've never actually played a full rogue, like a base rogue, base fight. Oh no, you've played a great weapon fighter at the very, very, very start of Princes of the Apocalypse. A very short-lived fighter.
I did play a fighter. I played a barbarian rogue. I played a cleric fighter, and I played a wizard fighter. So actually, maybe it's not rogue. Maybe it's fighter.
Maybe it's fighter.
Maybe, yeah. I was going to say, I would have said cleric because obviously, but then again, I only have 2 characters to base off of. I thought maybe it was cleric.
Cleric is probably
Totally
my
mistake.
favorite single class to play. So I would agree with you if it wasn't rogue. Cleric is really, really, really good.
So yeah, to be fair, in the time that I've known you, so what, the last 5-6 years, you've racked up 4 characters with cleric in them to varying
So
degrees.
it is my single class, favorite single class. It's mainly because of the versatility in terms of what you can do. You've got really good damage being pumped out by Spirit Guardians with your cantrips. You can just really, really dish it out. You've got amazing healing if you need it. Cool concept-wise, RP-wise, heavy armor. You can go up front. You're not really limited by being a cleric. You can do it all, and that's probably why it is one of my favorite classes, definitely. And you just get loads of different flavors of deities. You can go Grave Cleric, Tempest Cleric, Life. Yeah, just a lot.
Yeah, what's yours, Dan?
I want to hear yours.
You want to hear mine? All right. Well, Carl says he thinks he knows what mine is. Truth be told, when I was thinking about this, it took me quite a while to figure out what my class was. I think it's partially because I'm an almost forever DM. So I spend a lot of my waking life thinking up cool characters that I then sit there and go, oh, wouldn't this be really cool to play as a character? So I find like I was sitting there and I was thinking which classes I was kind of cycling through them all. At the first I couldn't think about it. Case in point, we have a Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign coming up soon. I may or may not have created a character for each class that's in my catalog, and the idea is when I turn up to session 0, I will have a plethora of characters to choose from. Yeah, I'm in that kind of position.
So Dan, give us
so
the deets.
If I had to pin the tail on it, I think it has to be sorcerer.
I knew it.
Called
I knew it.
Called it. I
Really?
didn't call it, but that's what I said to him before we started recording.
No, it's
Sorcerer.
mainly because of Mary. I was like, Mary's your favorite character.
For me, for me, I think it comes back to Azorius, doesn't it?
Shire.
Shire, that's it. Shire, yes.
Shire Lovecraft. Yeah. So
Oh, really?
the reason I ended up, because I was talking to Julie about this, and the thing that made me finish on Sorcerer was I kind of sat there and went, that's the only class that I've played twice. With Shire Lovecraft and then Mary in the Prince of the Apocalypse campaign. So for me, I find that when it comes to Sorcerer, the fantasy of someone who is naturally like a font of destructive potential, there's just something about that tickles my fancy. Shire Lovecraft is a young gnome, young forest gnome. I played him as a wild mage, like a wild magic sorcerer back in 4th edition, simply because of the potential for chaos and destructive carnage. Fantastic character. Mary, who I played in Pota, was I wanted him to be a pyromancer, so I ended up kind of going down draconic bloodline and then just taking nothing but fire and fire adjacent spells. So I think the only spell I took that wasn't strictly fire was Fog Cloud. But I was like, yes, fire makes smoke. And yeah, it was just that kind of idea that it was just, the wizards, they're a bit intelligent. They spend ages learning. No, the sorcerers can just do it. I just
instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Okay.
In itself, it's bizarre because as soon as I step into other media, so when I play online games, for example, I will always gravitate towards the tank role. For example, I played Curse of Strahd a little while back, played a sword and board paladin, really enjoyed that. She didn't last too long because it was Curse of Strahd, but that was really, really fun. Having ADHD probably doesn't help in so much that my favorite class, if I did have to pick one, I'm saying sorcerer right now. Tomorrow it could well be something else. I am utterly fascinated with the Stars Druid currently. The flavor of that subclass blows my mind. So that's right at the top of my list. But then in terms of while we're on the Witchlight characters, it's Star Druid, and then it's the College of Spirits Bard, which is dressed up as a tarot reader, and then it's a halfling paladin who comes from a family of thieves and wants to be a knight. And then,
you got way more characters lined up than I do. Carl, what have you got for us?
Dan knows, but I'm going to ask you, Anton. What do you think my favorite class is?
I'm going to go with Bard.
No, this has actually been the first time I played Bard in EOE. I played Bard because I had a concept in mind, and Bard only really fit in with the concept. No, I am raw deeps.
Blood Hunter because he's edgy.
No, raw deeps. I gravitate towards the melee classes.
Yeah, okay.
Particularly barbarians. I just have a great love for the idea of just utter recklessness in running into the middle of something, swinging a big weapon, and just hoping it falls before it can fell me. I've loved barbarians since 4th edition. My barbarian in 4th edition was a absolute freight train. In one of my other games, someone else is playing the barbarian, and I'm so envious. I chose monk. I just look across this other barbarian and like, I want to be you. I like them in the sense that mainly I always enjoy the story of coming up with a barbarian, because I always like the idea of someone who's hyper spiritual with the earth, the guardian spirits and things, thinking of like strong family ties. Like I have a big love for Nordic mythology. It's one of the things I love the most. I love the myths and the legends, and a lot of the time I kind of use that as a basis when building the barbarians. Their sort of reverence for battles and things. So that's why I love the idea of reckless. In our other game, there's a rule that we set which is called ABR. Always be reckless. So when our barbarian runs into battle, we just start chanting ABR, ABR, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be reckless." So,
Surrounded by 6 enemies.
exactly.
Reckless.
Reckless attack, always be reckless. And hopefully nothing ever happens to catch you, but if something happens to catch you and I have to build a new character, I guarantee it will be a barbarian, and hell will come to my enemies as I lay them low with my great axe. And it may not be a half orc, it will probably be a half orc, but it's something about that class in the sense of just the raw power of it. It just really appeals to me.
Something that's just occurred to me. I appreciate we've just been speaking about favorite classes. Something I've noticed that I do, I want to see if either of you two do it as well. I spoke about Merry, who was a pyromancer sorcerer. That Merry was the 5th Merry I have played. Like, Merry has been across game systems, across all sorts of classes, and I find that the character of Merry is something I keep on coming back to. Do either of you find that you've got a favorite character to play?
So for me, it would be Damien, my Barbarian Rogue. So that's a character I've played in 2 campaigns now. I played it before, and then I played it in the campaign that Julia ran. And that's a character I'm very fond of. So I would definitely consider playing that character again. Just a really good blend of those 2 characteristics. Barbarian Rogue, he's a half orc, noble. There's just so many dimensions to the character, and it really works well.
I think the only time I've played a character more than once is I think I came up to see you wherever you had moved to, Dan, and I joined one of your games, and I brought group. It was the first time I played the 5th edition of a Barbarian. So I played group twice, but one in a full campaign and once in like 2 sessions. But I've never really had repeating characters. Every single character I have played has been a new character. Maybe the name, I may have shared the name over 1 or 2 characters. I think I've used Eric Crescent more than once. I definitely used Eric Crescent on a fighter in 4th edition we built to be a dragoon. I even used Eric Crescent in my Dragoon in Final 14. And in the other game that we play, I play Eric Crescent, who is now renamed himself Eric Cask, but that's a very long story I don't want to get into. But I think I've only ever used the name more than once, but I've never used the same character. For instance, if I was to play a barbarian in Explorers Elsewhere, should anything happen, it would not be group. It would be a completely new barbarian, a completely new character.
But would it be the same build, the same
There's
characteristics?
only so many builds you can do until you start multi-classing. So,
I mean, would it be the same personality? I'm just thinking.
No.
So
No, this is what I thought of. I actually did think about this the other day, and if I was to play a barbarian, I have an idea of how I'd play them in mind, but it would not be anything like group was. Like, group was such a unique thing. I think this time round I wouldn't want to play the sort of laughs as he runs in to kill everything, and down the corridor you just hear him laughing as the enemies are screaming and running away. No, I'd probably play something. I'm trying to think of the best example of a character for it, but someone a bit more gruff and a bit more grounded and maybe a little more jaded. I think that's the thing. I'd definitely play, drop the voice a few octaves. But no, I wouldn't reuse group, because if I was using the personality I have for group, I'd build group.
Yeah, fair.
So, but no, I've seen multiple Marys. I have played with multiple Marys as well, and I've had many discussions about Merry. And Merry was the first NPC that I ever met in D&D. He was the mission giver when we first started. He promptly disappeared at the end of that dungeon, but yeah, Merry was the first ever D&D character that I ever met, basically, as group.
I don't know if this is within the scope of the discussion today, but I was wanting perhaps to discuss the least favorite classes. Now, maybe this is too controversial, and we should just ban this conversation. but I'm willing to go there if you are.
I mean, okay. I'm willing to give it a shot.
I'm happy to step forward and stick my neck out first.
Go on.
Okay, go Dan.
So remember how I was saying that the character at the top of my list to play next is a Stars Druid? My least favourite class is Druid.
How come?
Maybe it's because I grew up in Essex. I don't personally vibe with the nature class. It doesn't do it as much for me as kind of divine or arcane based casting. for example. So there's a part of me that I don't know, the druid class just kind of leaves me a bit cold, to the point where, when I think about druid, I inevitably end up thinking of it's going to be a moon druid. I can't remember ever seeing a Circle of the Land 5th ed druid, for example. And that is why I love the star druid so much, because the character I'm going to be playing removes the nature aspect of the druid, and now I have this celestial wisdom based castle, which for me is just sets all my lights off. And very interestingly, because I thought we might talk about this, I had a look at the stats from D&D Beyond. It was from June 2020, but they looked at all the representation of classes saved to their database, and very interestingly, druids were last. They were the least played class.
Druid is definitely in the bottom bracket of my categories for classes, and I can kind of get it, because before Tasha's, the subclasses were very, very lackluster, but the new ones are very, very cool. So again, you're right, it takes that nature aspect out and it gives you something completely different, and you can make much more interesting characters, I find.
Yeah, you turn it to stars.
They've done a lot for Druid. It'd probably be maybe sort of a mid bracket for me, but for me, the very bottom, and I don't think I'd ever play it, is Ranger. I know a lot of people I know there's a reverence for Ranger, and I know I'm literally painting a target on my back for many Rangers to find me, but I've never gelled with Ranger. I've just never found a build that I enjoy. I know they've also done a lot of iterations of Ranger. They've constantly gone back to the drawing board with it. I think with 5th ed, as well, going back to 4th edition, I would have played Ranger in a heartbeat, because Ranger was such a damage dealer. I remember one of our players
She was a blender.
Absolute blender. Just bad guys went in and just meat came out. But in 5th edition, when I look at Ranger, I don't see anything that jumps out to me. It's a shame, because from my memories of Rangers to what I see, I just can't ever reconcile it. And maybe one day I'll give it a go to see, maybe in a one-shot or something. But yeah, for me it's Ranger, and I know that may anger a lot of people, and I am sorry.
I'm kind of there with you, because both thematically and mechanically, Rangers have had a rough time in the way they were designed, construction, and there's been some catch-up done in Tasha's, and I think in Xanathar's. But it's become very, very complicated to build a Ranger that's very cohesive, I find. So yeah, I kind of see it.
The idea of Ranger was achieved in 4th. Again, the idea of Ranger just never translated well into 5th, I think, and as such. Where did Ranger come on that list, Dan?
There were about 4 or 5 classes that all had 7% of the vote, compared to Druid's 6%. And I believe Ranger, Monk, Sorcerer, like they were all kind of languishing in that group.
So yeah, and on that, my least favorite is probably Monk.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't gel with the theme of it. Maybe I could find a theme that I'm happy with Monk. Maybe like a bruiser, brawler playing a Goliath monk. I don't know, something like that. Maybe that would be my vibe. You're kind of, what are you really getting? You can move fast, punch, and then what else are you getting thematically? I'm missing a whole RP aspect. There's no spells. So it's kind of like, how do I play this character in an interesting way, you know?
I'll admit I agree with you. It's odd. Like I like the theme. I like the flavor and the fantasy of it, but the reality of it never seemed to gel with me.
Yeah.
That said, when I sit here in this chair watching Badger do the things that Badger does in the Cormier game, and I think, what have I done? Like, what have I allowed in this game?
Monk is a class that works very, very well for some people that really like, I don't know, Kung Fu or have that kind of vision in their head. Does not work for me.
That I think is also a problem, because I do play a monk, and one of the biggest things I have is I'm playing a drunken monk as well. So I have this very big idea of Jackie Chan, like fighting with the furniture, fighting with like a ladder. But then when it comes to it in the actual game, I'm pretty much just saying, I punch it, I punch it, I punch it. And when I try to be jazzy, it's purely for my own gratification, and everyone sits there and like, yep, cool, all right. What you punch it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I punch it.
I don't know how you would make things more mechanically interesting.
Yeah, it's really difficult, because the narrative I have in my head just doesn't fit the play style. And yeah, okay, I'm doing some great damage, but I want to be descriptive. I want to be acrobatic. I want to, you want to be the kung fu masters of a film. I watched Kung Fu Hustle the other day. So, that's just nuts when it comes to the kung fu. And then I went in and played sort of as a monk. And again, I really want to emulate this Kung Fu Hustle vibe. And again, I just end up every turn. I punch it again. Do you know what? I'll use this and I'll punch it twice more. I just can't describe
You're not
the
even,
really
and
cool
you're not even
things
the
I wanna
one
do.
taking the damage, because at least the barbarian and the fighter are scrappy, are in there taking hits. Monk just buggers off, so you're just off the map half the thing, and then you come back in, do your 3 punches, and then you leave.
The drunken monk even gets a free disengage if you do a flurry of blows. He's literally walking in and going, boom, boom, whee!
Yeah, so you're basically absent half the combat, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so yeah, I get that with monk. I do love playing it. I just can't ever make the narrative side of monk work. Which again, you're right, with a barbarian, for me there's more descriptive power because there's only so many ways you can describe swinging a big axe, but there's a lot more ways you can describe enduring the hardships of battle.
Awesome. Okay, I think we got by with that without being too controversial.
Oh, and that bell means the tavern is going to be closing soon. Finish off your drinks and enjoy your time here. Before you go, let's tell you where you can find more information. So if you want to follow the tavern in itself, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Tavern Between, and you can find us on Spotify and Apple podcast services. If you want to follow me personally, I am also on Twitter and Instagram at Group Stormbear. That's GROOP Stormbear, all one word.
If you want to catch up with me and the rest of the group, you can find our Cormier Echoes of War campaign on the Explorers of Elsewhere channel, alongside this video with the within the playlists. You can find me on Instagram at DMDMT or on Twitter at DMDanT.
And I have finally gotten Twitter.
Hey!
So you may find me at TBD_Anton. Very, very simple. And send me messages if you want to know more about some builds or other questions. Yeah, send me a thing.
All of these will be available down below on the YouTube video. For our listeners, I hope you wrote those down. But please respect our neighbours as you leave. These are 2 quiet dimensions that we sit between, so we don't want to rile them up too much. And hopefully, we see you next time. Thank you for your patronage. Bye, guys.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye, bye, bye.
Thanks for watching. Release segments like this from the Tavern Between Dimensions every Friday here on the Explorers of Elsewhere channel. Otherwise, if you want to listen to the episode in full, you can check us out on Spotify and Amazon Music.